I'm gonna clap. So
this is the hugest podcast in the history of podcasts.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
Get this straight.
I
99 to 7. 99 to 7.
One of your casts had over 6,000 views. I didn't know your mom had that many devices.
Shots fired.
So our concept for this is pros versus Joes, right?
What is this, amateur hour?
37 minutes. Engage. On location podcast. Pro versus Joe.
Oh, that's it. I've had it with this jump.
But I'm too slick. Better pick up the game. We can't do this. It's over. That's a cool story too.
We got no food. We got no jobs. Our pets' heads are falling off.
What are we calling this? Pros versus, or not pro versus
I don't know who you are.
Joe, Pro and Joe. Pros versus Joe.
I don't know what you want.
Pros versus Joe. Pros versus Joe.
If I regardless to get mine, another long day, never say it, don't try. Ain't about pay, my face don't lie.
Shut up, you're so annoying.
We did it. You all did it. You helped. I've got the Aramsco hat on. Luke Drager from Aramsco in Seattle has been pivotal in helping us collect socks for Socktember. I wish I had the trophy. We have a giant trophy. The Ojo Podcast, Socktember winners, the first 2020, first of our annual events. This year, first year event. So we got the Sisters for Socks, Lindsay Ward, the content specialist out of Seattle. We got Tammy Berkley, Merritt Construction. Their team was the Sock Hawks out of Tacoma, Washington. And Kelsey Isaacson, Home with Kelsey Isaacson, the Sock Agents out of Puyallup, Washington. And then John Isaacson, a name you all know and love. Representing Three Kings Environmental, our team, the Sock Kings, from our offices in Sumner and Vancouver, Washington. And so Monday, I'm hoping to go hit the road, announce the winners. So we'll have an update on Monday, which is the same day that this podcast is going to drop. It's going to drop. And we'll also be announcing the winner by live stream of the Accelerate Restoration Software co-branded the Ojo Podcast iPad, t-shirt, the book Be Intentional Estimating by John Isaacson. What a killer package. So we're doing crazy things around here. Really appreciate the support. It's been a lot of fun. We've had people from all over the country support this event. We raised, the first official count was 5,195. It was 5,270, and then I think Lindsay got some additional socks. We got some additional socks. So we are well over 5,300 pairs of socks. Boom! So I'm excited about that. So, and a lot of them were the nice warm socks, and so obviously those are going to go to people in need in supporting local charities that are near and dear to those all-star teams' hearts. So we'll get some updates. You can look at thedojo.com/do-good. We'll have some updates there, and obviously you can look at the pages for those individual teams as well. This episode is a part 2 of a discussion we had with David Princeton, the first ever guest on. It was it started out as 3 questions with a pro, which was going to be a sub category of my. Fire alarm's going off.
Hey, it's happening. Everybody stay calm. What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm. Wait. Everybody calm down.
Whew, that crisis was averted. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, David Princeton was our first ever guest on the Dojo Podcast. That was 3 questions with the pro, which was going to be a subcategory of the Intentional Restorer from Restoration and Remediation magazine. And those cringy videos evolved into what is now the cringy Dojo Podcast. It's not cringy. Psh. It is the infotainment podcast for the skilled trades. We aim to inform you as we entertain you. Doing a great job of it. It's the most listen to, celebrated, awarded podcast on the interwebs with the Diojo podcast in the name. There's nobody beating us in that category, so you heard it here. So you can watch on YouTube, you can listen on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, those kinds of things. Please subscribe, listen, rate, bink, 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 all of the things that you're supposed to do, share it, that kind of stuff. So it's huge. So this is part 2 from the Diojo podcast 32, which is also Pro vs. Joe 7, I believe. So this is a Pro vs. Joe conversation. We brought in the pro, David Princeton, who is a claims advocate. And I think it's important. It's really, it's been something Brian has used at All American Restoration. When a claim is doubtful and disputed, and we give the example, I think, in episode 32 of a client that was excluded based on mold, and how David was able to help them through that process. So that's where it's kind of crossed into that gray area where it's beyond our ability to help as contractors help the client, somebody to help dig into the policy and get them over the finish line as far as getting coverage, I guess over the starting line to get coverage, so that we can help. So I think that's a great resource for contractors, when it's gone beyond the point that you can help the client, there's these resources. So in episode 32 of the Diojo podcast, David talks about a little bit of the differences between public adjusting and claims advocacy, and other things, and has some really good, solid advice as far as like clients when they're I thought my big takeaway, and it's like a no-brainer, right? But when a client is being asked a question by an adjuster, it is very important and okay for that client to say, why are you asking me that question, prior to answering the question, right? Because we all know there's some maybe loaded questions that can get them into trouble or put them in positions where their claim's now doubtful and disputed. So I think there's some really great advice that'll help contractors and clients when dealing with insurance claims. So this one, we get a little bit more into COVID-specific things, which is very interesting in the respect of being a business owner or a contractor, what is or isn't in the policy, and then how that goes, especially as we're dealing with the pandemic coverage, government shutdowns, those kinds of things, and how that impacts a business and what you do and don't have coverage for, what those conversations are like. So interesting conversation. Really fun to have somebody on that is a nerd when it comes to those policy issues. You can tell David is very passionate about digging into the details of insurance policies. So hope you enjoyed the Diojo podcast, the infotainment podcast for the skilled trades. So spread the word, listen up. Thank you for joining us. Okay.
But yeah.
Well, so that brings up an issue which it's funny because as restoration contractors, we can kind of laugh or scoff at insureds that don't know what's in there. I forgot to ask, are you drinking anything special, David?
Just water.
What brand?
Tap.
Wisconsin Tap?
Wisconsin water.
Tap.
What about
Tap.
you, Brian? What are you smoking today?
I got, you know what's funny is I have the Alec Bradley Prensado, the one that made you ill
Oh, man.
when
Yeah.
we first hung out. And then I have some Old Forester bourbon
Old
And-
Forester?
in my Yeti.
I'm drinking New Forester. No.
You've been drinking about 3 different things so far, I've been counting.
No,
You're on
just
your second cigar too, huh?
Yeah, that first one was, I started a little earlier, so that first one I was smoking the Ventura Cigar Psycho 7, which I really like. And then
The
this
one you have, is that a Churchill? Look how long that thing is.
a Gurkha Evil.
Okay.
So these are actually really nice. And then I was drinking, what's that, Bullet Bourbon with some
My favorite.
Costco lemonade and some
Bullet's my
blackberries.
favorite. That's my favorite.
And then I've
Did
moved.
you ever have a bullet old fashioned?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have. And I moved to the What is this? A Hot Valley Stash Panda. It's
What did you spit out earlier?
Oh, that was the bourbon. I just coughed or something. Not COVID. So just contractors can talk to, and business owners too, like people that don't know what's in their policy, right?
Yep.
David's homework assignment for everybody listening is read your policy, personal and business, right? But so you mentioned, David, this. So one of my other friends is Raymond Titman advocates for the insurance carriers, right? Mm-hmm. And so across the board, it's like 13-1, right? That have gone to some level of Supreme Court or higher court have been primarily in the favor of the carriers. You're given a suspect look.
Yeah, nothing's hit the Supreme Court yet.
No. Mm-mm.
Or well, this. Okay, this is a Missouri federal court. So.
No.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Hey, get your facts straight, John.
No. Hell no.
Higher court.
Okay.
So let's cut there. Let's back up.
Go back.
So and right now, at least for me playing at home, my score is 4-1. So.
Okay.
4-1, not 17-1, but
13-1. 13-1.
Or 13-1.
77-6.
Friggin' facts state. Yeah. 85. I don't know if the Blazers won or
yeah.
not. Okay. So what's your 4-1 as far as cases have gone to the higher courts within their states, right?
No.
Oh, well, pardon me, Mr. Perfect. I guess I forgot that you never ever make a mistake.
So all right, let's set John up here. Let's set John up. So John, here's what's happened, John. So
sounds like
I'm gonna clap. So
this is the hugest podcast in the history of podcasts.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
Get this straight. 99-7.
One of your casts had over 6,000 views. I didn't know your mom had that many devices.
Shots fired.
Joke's on you, buddy.
I like your hat.
Mom
I like your hat, though, John. Yeah, show that A.
Okay, 4-1.
Yeah. All right. So here's what's happened, right?
Let's let the all pro. This is all pro Joe.
Well, I'll give you the setup, those, right? Because you want to lead in. That's what you're looking for. A nice little clean lead in, right? So that clean lead in is that there's been, I believe right now, over 860 lawsuits filed across the country, COVID business income interruption related, right? Out of those 860, so there's been 5 preliminary decisions. So basically, insurance carriers have made motions to dismiss, and those motions have been considered now at both state levels and in the federal level. And so that's what you have going on is it's just initial motions for either summary judgment or summary dismissal. And then on the other side, you have something called MDL, and I'll need to look up what that stands for to be exactly sure, but I think it's some type of like mass tort litigation where you can group a lot of these common losses together. And that MDL litigation, that was denied. So there wasn't a common ground found there. And both plaintiff attorneys and insurance company defense firms filed motions to try to reach that decision, that they didn't want these things to be able to be grouped together. So that they wanted to have, instead of one fight about 10,000 claims, they want to have 10,000 fights, right?
That's on the side of the courts. The courts are saying that they want to each one individual, or that was the decision. That was the decision, is that the MDL was not allowed to proceed forward. So the grouping, at least the way that it was presented, that was not allowed. So, but the 417 Salon, right? That has rumblings and potential to be a class action. Well, and that's there's a salon and a couple other businesses that are tied into that, right?
Yep. So the commonality there is that they all have Cincinnati Insurance as their insurance carrier. And then out of those 17, or out of those policyholders, I believe there's 17 variations of the policy that are all pled and acknowledged by both sides, that there are 17 distinct versions, right?
I just want you to know I hate you. And so does my dad.
So it's a common agreed to fact. And that can happen through your interrogatory process, right? So one side asks another side questions and they either agree or disagree, right? With the way that those questions are asked or phrased. So you have all of these people, and you have essentially the common issue of, is the presence, right, or is COVID-19 a physical loss or a physical damage of covered property, right? So that was really the central issue, and that's what people are playing the score game, right? So it's 4-1, at least by my knowledge. You're saying 13-1, so I'm not aware of the other 12 that are out there. But
so let's be clear, 4-1 under the claim that, because the big question is, the first question is, does COVID present a physical damage, right?
Well, so that's the way the insurance companies want it to be viewed, is it a physical damage, right? And if you go back and look at a lot of the rhetoric and a lot of the information that was put out there, it was focusing on physical damage, saying a virus cannot cause physical damage. Well, physical damage isn't the trigger. So there's the word or, right? So and the sentence will basically say something like this: direct physical loss of or damage to covered property, right? And so there's two things that are happening in that sentence, right? One is the word or. So physical damage cannot be the same thing as physical loss. Otherwise, the contract would be redundant, right? If you had two things that mean the same thing, then there's no need to say it, right? You would just say one of them. So the other part of that is you have the word of, which is really important. So physical loss of covered property. So what you're seeing happen is people are trying to, first off, if you're the insurance company, you're saying it's not physical damage. Look over here at physical damage. Ignore that whole physical loss thing, right? And then if you're on the plaintiff side or the policyholder side, you're saying, wait a minute, it's a physical loss and physical loss of covered property. Well, when you get into what the definition of a property is, right? So a property is usually described as the relationships of people to stuff. So let me give you an example, and you tell me if you think this is a physical loss. If my restaurant had a capacity of 100, and now because of COVID restrictions, my capacity is now 12, or let's keep it round numbers, 10, right? Have I sustained a physical loss? Have I lost the physical use of my property? Am I able to reach the capacity that I need in order to operate? Is that not a physical loss? Yeah. The other part of it is when you get into something being a physical loss of, you get into these other, call it constructive arguments. So there's three primary cases that the plaintiff side is always sort of pointing to. One of them is a case that involves a house that was infested with brown recluse spiders.
Ugh.
Right? Yeah. Another one is that the house was structurally okay, but the hillside fell away, meaning that it wasn't safe to occupy, right? And so when the hillside dropped away, the house structurally was still there. Insurance company said, well, it's not damaged, right? It's not physically damaged. There's your house. But you had the physical loss of the house because its intended use was to serve as a habitat, and it couldn't fulfill that intended use. Yeah. The other part that you have is you have like the Westfield fire case in Colorado. That one, there was a mysterious leak of gasoline. So there was a filling station across the street. They never causally connected the two things, but a church could not hold services because of this smell of gas, and it posed a hazard to have people inside. So the fire department shut them down, right? Because there was a dangerous condition in the premises due to the smell of those fumes. So those are the cases that are essentially being analogized to the COVID-19 situation, which is I'm being deprived the physical loss of use of my property. It presents a hazardous condition, right? So as people come in, you don't know that they have it or don't have it. You can be asymptomatic for up to 2 weeks before you actually develop the outward symptoms. And you have all of these safety orders coming into play, right? In terms of limiting social distancing, limiting the number of people, directly closing the businesses. So those are the, call it the central issues.
You know what else is a central issue? Not getting in on this Accelerate Restoration Software iPad free giveaway. If you are listening to this before 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Monday, October 12th, 2020, then there may still be time to register, but we will be going live with Brady Hogarth from Accelerate Restoration Software to announce the winner of the free iPad from this promotion that the Diojo podcast has been doing with Accelerate Restoration Software. If you've been watching or listening to the Diojo podcast for any period of time, you know that we do things a little bit differently here. Our goal is to inform you, to entertain you, and to help you shorten your dang learning curve for professional development. So, in the spirit of doing things a little bit differently, here is a sponsored advertisement done a little bit differently. You need the data. You need the information. We need data.
Please, please.
Bob, right? You need the data from the field, but so many of these systems are cumbersome, right? How do you help the people that you need the information from get it to you quicker? Your pinch point, you as the owner, the estimator, the project manager, production manager, you need the data.
Give me. I need.
Right? We get paid for the data, the documentation that we can present to, the clients and the carriers and the programs. So when we start to think as people in a position of leadership, I talk about this in Be Intentional Estimating, how do we facilitate the processes so that the people that we need the information from can give it to us more consistently, clearly, and effectively.
I need. Give me, please.
One of the things that really excites me about Accelerate Restoration Software, this is designed by restoration contractors for restoration contractors, and they work diligently on their platform to make it as tech-friendly as possible. If it can't be used by the people in the field, then how is that going to translate into helping you, bill more efficiently, effectively, and get paid quicker?
All right.
We are excited. This collaboration between Accelerate Restoration Software and the Diojo podcast. Accelerate hands down offers the best field service solution in the restoration market. They're putting their money where their mouth is. They're giving away a free iPad to prove it. We'll have a prize package together, which will include a copy of my book, a Diojo podcast t-shirt, the free iPad, which will be co-branded from Accelerate and the Diojo podcast. If you go to xlrestorationsoftware.com/landing/iPad-giveaway. We'll have the link in the notes. And you can register there. You can also sign up to request a free demo. But get this by restoration contractors for restoration contractors to help you shorten that time between work completed and work paid for, by presenting you with a tool that is easy for your techs to use so you get the information that you need.
Give me. I need.
Check it out. We'll have the links in the show notes, and look forward to seeing you all live October 5th when we announce the winner of the Accelerate Restoration Software iPad free giveaway.
Well, to that point, what about a church? I mean, if a church is not allowed to hold physical gatherings, and then their reduction in tithes and offerings or parish or whatever, however you want to term that, could they then claim a loss because of COVID?
Yeah. And here's the main thing to understand. So everybody out there that has a business is more than likely sustaining some type of loss unless you happen to sell hand sanitizer. Right.
Right.
So if you have not pivoted, if you're a distillery, right, who sold craft spirits, if you have not pivoted to making hand sanitizer and getting that out in 50-gallon drums, you're missing your chance to make mint, right? But the other part of it is essentially every business is going to be touched by this thing some way or another. Because let me give you an example of another group I work with. I'll try this here. So right up here, so you have Thirst Group, right? So Thirst Group is a nonprofit that was established just because of this COVID situation by a guy named Nate Whitehouse. And Thirst Group is, I believe right now in 17 states, growing to 20, I believe next week. And they are actively lobbying and trying to get legislation on the state level to help businesses, specifically their niche is the hospitality industry, right? So bars, restaurants, hotels, hair salons, all of those things where a distinctive service is being provided. So getting that legislation, getting people to organize, getting the word out to actually file claims, because one of the biggest things that happened in this whole thing was one of the largest suppressions of claims ever, right? Think of it this way. I guarantee you every business out there probably picked up the phone and called their insurance agent and said, hey, I'm being shut down. Is this going to be covered? Right? And by the time that agent is having their 100th phone call, and probably before they had their first phone call, they probably received notices and indications from underwriters or, claims professionals, or they called an executive at an insurance company and, what's the take going to be here? So those agents, right, and most of them are actually agents of the insurance company, not of the insured. So read your policies, it'll tell you. No, not even a captive. Like even your homeowner's policy. So they're not your agent. They're an agent of the insurance company. They're not an agent of the buyer.
Right.
So, but a lot of them said, hey, you can submit it if you want to, but it's probably going to be denied. And the ones that actually went forward and submitted it, they were saying, the adjuster would call back and say, hey, we're in receipt of your claim. I'm going to deny it, but now tell me what happened. And so it's those types of claim suppression tactics. It's those kinds of getting the word out. I mean, even right now, the big I, so III.org, right? The Insurance Information Institute, they're still leading with the narrative of, these claims aren't covered. They were never intended to cover, these policies were never intended to cover. Well, here's the neat thing about insurance, right? Insurance is a contract of adhesion. So when you went in and bought your policy was handed to you. You didn't sit down and pull out a pen and both put your brains to it, right, and write up a contract. You essentially had no bargaining power. It was a take it or leave it proposition, right? So you have this take it or leave it proposition. That's that contract of adhesion. So if there's terms in there that are not clear, right? If there's terms in there that are reasonably ambiguous, so ambiguous, that definition is essentially two reasonable people can read the same thing and come to different conclusions, right? So that's the definition of an ambiguity. So if you have ambiguous language, if you have language that's not clear, if you have language that's not explicit, it goes the way of the policyholder. It goes the way of the insured, that homeowner, that business owner, right? So what's at issue is the terms physical loss of, well, is COVID a physical loss of covered property, right? If it is a physical loss of covered property, and they sustained a business income loss, right? Now you get into that level of exclusions, right? So what's going to actually be excluded? So if you get past the insuring agreement, you then get into exclusions, and that's where they come in with the pollution exclusion. That's where they come in with the microbe exclusion, and they're trying to find respite there. What's unique about Cincinnati Insurance, this is really cool. So what's unique about Cincinnati Insurance is in their filings to shareholders, right? Because they're a publicly traded company. So in their filing to shareholders, back when the SARS SV2 situation happened, they actually told their shareholders that we don't need to put a virus exclusion in our policies because it's just not covered on the insuring agreement, right? And so that was their position. Well, what this federal judge just said to Cincinnati Insurance is based on the way it was pled, so they take everything at face value to be true, right? So there's no ancillary evidence or support that needed to be submitted. So they take it at face value, the way that it was pled, and based on the way that it was pled, if it turns out to be true, there's coverage there. That's what just happened in Missouri.
Well, that's right? What I read. It said, under the all-risk insurance policies that plaintiffs purchased, the insurance company agreed to pay for direct loss unless the policy is excluded or limited to loss. And that was the plaintiff literally said pandemic and such was not excluded like that, which has been the claim for many of the others that have been denied, right? Is pandemic is excluded. They didn't have a later, right?
Yeah. Right now, I don't know that there's a lot being litigated where pandemic is a specifically named exclusion. And the reason why, so think of it this way, the reason why they categorize these policies as all risk, right? So all risk is this generic, which arm needs to come in? All right. So all risk is this generic sort of term, right? And the reason why it goes that way is that insurance statement, that insuring agreement is so broadly stated that it literally covers everything and anything that happens. That's why it's called all risk. The exclusions, right, which can be 1 page to 20 pages. I think I've seen exclusions as long as 50 pages in my career. The exclusions are the things that remove coverage from applying. So this is the way to kind of think of it. This is that mental moniker. Insuring agreements is broadly stated. Exclusions are narrow, right? So they're narrow and they're explicit.
Right.
Because if it's not said, it's not excluded.
No, but is it against the law, though?
The fasten seatbelt sign is on.
But is it against the law, though?
Seatbelt sign is
But
on.
is it against the law?
Seatbelt sign is on.
But is it against the law?
Seatbelt sign.
But is it against the law?
It's on. Seatbelt sign is on.
Is this, like, to put it in terms maybe that more people understand, like mold is a common exclusion or limit, right? So if you have mold, it's either excluded from your policy, which is, I got started in 2002. It wasn't excluded. It wasn't even something on most companies' radars, right? So it was the mold is gold era. And then as policies got rewritten, right, then there was exclusions and those kinds of things. And we get into the scenarios we talked about earlier. So is that, I'm trying to remember, they were talking about ingress and egress coverage, but I thought it was funny. The court held that the insurance company conflated loss and damage, and both terms must be given meaning, which is exactly what you opened with, right? And then the state of physical loss is not synonymous with physical damage, as you stated in that brown recluse. How terrible is that? You buy a house and you find out it's infested with brown recluses. Good God.
Yeah, I just hope you found it out in time. I'd hate to know, you know, is Sparky no longer around? Like, what happened that
just covered in spiders? Well, that I remember a question went around, you know, what was the first horror movie that gave you nightmares? And for me, for sure, it was Arachnophobia, because I thought, oh my God, you know.
Check your shoes.
Yeah, the spiders coming out of the guy's face and everything. So, so what is that? So this is really the first one that has opened more of a door in respect to what a lot of people are saying is, right, I bought insurance, and that's exactly, I don't remember, he's like, you know, I've paid for insurance for X number of years, and now when I finally need it, you know, like literally need it, like I can at most use 25% of my capacity. Brian and I talked about on an earlier episode, you know, one of the Mexican restaurants we go to, he's like, why would I even open? I have to do this, and I have to have paper, and I have to throw every menu away, and we have to clean after every, and it's all these, so might as well just keep doing the takeout. It's like, you know, obviously the government.
You guys like sports, right?
Yep.
So the Mendoza line.
200.
Right? The
yep.
200?
200.
Yeah. Brian,
you know
what's the Mendoza line?
The 200 batting average.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So baseball player, I forget his first name, but his last name was Mendoza. I think he was a Yankee, wasn't he?
Let's Google it, huh?
Yeah. Hey, that's what the power of the internet. So essentially, it was the level that a batter has to hit to be a position player, in order to be borderline effective, right? So if you go below the Mendoza line, you're completely ineffective at batting, right?
Okay. So John, I'll give you 3 guesses. What was his name? It starts with an M.
Brian.
First name of no, it starts with an M, not a B. M.
Matt.
Nope.
Maurice.
Close. You were close.
Marnella.
Mario.
Mario.
It's a me.
It's a me. It's a Mario. So the Mendoza line. So what happened? This guy was not up to snuff, and they sent him down to the minors, and he sued.
So Wikipedia says the Mendoza line is an expression in baseball deriving from the name of the shortstop Mario Mendoza, whose poor batting average is taken to define the threshold of incompetent hitting. The cutoff is most often said to be 200. Mendoza's career average was slightly better than that.
Yeah.
So if you hit over 300, you're a Hall of Famer. If you hit under 200, you're below the Mendoza line.
Yeah. So here's the relevance of the Mendoza line to your favorite Mexican restaurant. So here's how it's connected. A business needs a minimum level of income just to be worthwhile to open, right? And so if their capacity was limited below their Mendoza line, they're losing money by trying to be open, right? It's more advantageous to stay closed. Well, this is where insurance could have stepped in or should be stepping in, which is what's called extra expense coverage, right? So whether it's an additional coverage form or you have the business income and extra expense coverage form where it's combined, what extra expense does is it pays those increased costs of being open, right? So that way you're still deriving essentially your same, hopefully, operation level or profit level. So that's the whole point of extra expense. It's to mitigate the financial loss of profit.
So I have a question to that point.
Please, yeah.
A little different than the Mexican restaurant standpoint from your occupancy being affected.
Mm-hmm.
There's a company we know of that's in the industry. They had a scare that they thought because the wife of one of the main foremen at this company who's a nurse, tested positive for COVID.
Sure.
They thought, okay, oh crap, this guy more than likely, if his wife tested positive, he's going to test positive. Well, if he tests positive, then he needs to stay home for at least 2 weeks, quarantine and all that. Well, what if their business was, he ultimately was found, he tested negative for it. But what if he would have found or tested positive for it? And then that would have negatively affected their business because one of their main foremen who was leading, was heading up this main job that was a 3-month project that was going to pay them a huge sum of money, but they couldn't then run that job because that foreman couldn't run the job. Mm-hmm. Is that then a possible claim? Because that's physical. I mean, if the employee that is running a job can't come to work based on...
Yeah, so I don't think that would be covered underneath the property policy because the employee isn't property. We did away with that a while ago.
It is physical though. He is a physical object.
But he's not covered property, right? So it's physical loss of or damage to covered property.
What about cash?
Cash is typically excluded or sublimited. So
that wouldn't fall under business. Does business interruption need a physical damage to kick
correct off? So in your example, so if I'm the employee, right, depending on what state it's in and the workers' comp laws and the industry I'm in, I may have an indemnifiable claim for my employee wages underneath a work comp statute. Mm-hmm. I would actually argue that the wife has a better chance of getting that claim covered than the husband. But the husband, presuming that the toxin of COVID came in through the wife who was a carrier, he might actually be able to make a workers' comp claim, depending on statutes, back against the hospital, right? So, but it depends, again, on what the state statutes are.
So the employee might be covered, but not the employer.
Yeah, and so the employer, this is a business risk that I think is not going to be covered, at least not underneath a property insurance policy. You might have something called keyman coverage that could be applicable. So keyman coverage is typically a life insurance product that would respond if a key person were to essentially die, right? This is what the policy essentially pays the business whatever the policy value is in that event to cover the anticipated cost of having to replace or sustain business without that key individual.
Well, on the individual level, then does that AFLAC insurance or whatever, where you have business interruption, they have a whole nother battle if for some reason their employer's not covering their loss of wages for those 14 weeks, or they're not
CARES Act, right?
Yeah, or they're not being covered by the unemployment or whatnot. So, well, that's the claim by the insurance companies is, where does this stop, right? You know, that's because that's the flip side of this is everybody wants somebody to pay for it, and ultimately we all pay for it, whether it's all of our insurance rates go through the roof or our taxes are going to go through the roof. I mean, eventually we all end up paying for it, right? I mean, so
well, and
this thing is free money.
Yeah, and
companies are going to get their money back one way or the other.
So give me 1 second here.
Nope. No seconds.
What? No seconds?
we can riff. I mean, this is the Pro versus Joe podcast. We're
flex your pros here. So riff away.
Come on, Pro.
What? Sorry, I got a text that distracted me. We're real pro here right now.
Wow.
All I want to say, John, is you keep going out of focus. Is your camera okay?
I've got my whatever Pro circle light deal, and
well, it keeps changing. It's like a warm light, now it's cool light. You know, I don't know what.
Well, I do have. I can control that. So here we go.
Hey, look at that. You just keep changing it.
And then in the middle, this is blue light or something. So. Yeah, I don't. It's interesting. All of these things that come into play. What you mentioned, Brian. I know of a company where an employee came back positive, and the health department got involved, and they do have like a metric of like triaging, like well, how much it was like 15 minutes of exposure and cumulative. So it could be in like 1 minute increments. So, I mean, the other side of that guy. If he came back positive, and that was the thing, they came back negative, but still it was like those people most directly impacted because there's the 14-day asymptomatic, the people most directly in contact with that person, even though they came back with negative results, had to be quarantined for the 14 days. And on that particular one, since the health department issued the 14-day quarantine, then they immediately were qualified for unemployment. But that was after the $600 money. I think we're in that weird phase in between the two policies, so it's just normal unemployment insurance. So
if they were lucky enough to get their claim processed.
Right. Well, and that's what they said. They said they automatically apply. They didn't have to do the 2-week wait period.
No, I'm talking about just even the processing. So like the great state of Wisconsin here, we still have 500,000 applications pending. So there's people who have been without a paycheck for 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah.
Waiting for their application to be approved. And it's sad.
And there again, you have like in Washington, I don't remember, we talked about that briefly on one of the Pro versus Joe episodes. Like there's hundreds, if not thousands, of like false cases. Like one guy was in the paper, he went to file, and they're like, well, you've already been filing and receiving checks, so.
Yep.
Wow.
Was it? Starting something new, we will, on once a month, be releasing the articles from the Intentional Restorer in, video, audio version. So, maybe it's something that'll help you. If it doesn't help you improve your property restoration business, if you have trouble sleeping, it will help you fall asleep. Listening to my voice drone on and on about some friggin' idea that probably wasn't even tried, that wasn't even tested, isn't even real. It's just blah, 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 blah. But, the monotony of my voice and my concepts will help you fall asleep. So here you go. Here's a little tidbit. We're going to try something new. We're always innovating here at the Dojo Podcast, the infotainment podcast for the skilled trades. So Many of you know, world acclaimed, worldwide known, huge segment, article, monthly feature in Restoration and Remediation magazine, R&R to those in the know. Yours truly, John Isaacson, known as The Intentional Restorer. Monthly column. So our most recent second Friday every month. Here you go. Story time with your pal, John Atkinson. Okay, so this month, October 2020, Goldilocks the Adjuster and the Three Estimator Bears. The Three Estimator Bears. I'm trying this new thing with the microphone up high, so we'll see. Is that giving a weird shadow? So we train our team members for many technical skills in property restoration, yet we are woefully behind in soft skills. This is a reality throughout construction and most skilled trades. While I believe the primary reason for this gap are not nefarious, as no one is actively trying to prevent professional development, if you and I, listen closely, if you and I don't face the facts, we will continue to struggle in areas that can be overcome with a dose of intentionality. So often we allow ourselves to be caught in the hamster wheel of busyness, telling ourselves that we are working harder and therefore never stopping to develop a process for working smarter. Work harder or something. You see that? It's difficult to do, but you and I, buddy, have to take a step back if we're going to improve the process. One area that I would like to direct our attention towards that assists our team members to perform their functions more efficiently and leads to much better project outcomes is business relationships. Dun, dun, dun. If we rate our relationships on a scale of niceness, which most of us, that's how we think and perceive of relationships, right? Oh, they're nice. Yeah, we're friends. Kind of, grade school metrics, right? Perhaps we can compare this feature to the familiar story of Goldilocks the Adjuster and the Three Estimator Bears. We have Pushover Bear, Pragmatist Bear, and Pertinacious Bear. I hope I said that right. I had to look that up. Pushover dynamics. When Goldilocks, the friendly neighborhood adjuster, or any other business role player, this could be subcontractors, vendors, suppliers, third-party administrators, consultants, etc., 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 comes along to discuss a claim, she finds it easy to compel Pushover Bear into compliance. It's almost too easy. Pushover Bear believes that if they are nice, and the adjuster is nice, that must mean we have a positive relationship. Well, if you didn't already fall asleep and you want more, check out our video page, youtube.com/TheDiojo, or you can check out thediojo.com for a list of videos and links and those kinds of things. Subscribe to the YouTubes if you want to get regular updates and not miss anything. You can subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well. And you can listen to the rest of that. And now, to get back to listening to somebody much more intelligent to me, let's get back to Pro vs. Joe number 8, our follow-up conversation with David Princeton from Claim Advocate Service. Him, is somebody filed on his behalf, and so, unfortunately,
like a good neighbor.
Yeah. People are going to take advantage of a bad situation, right? So.
Yeah. Well, so I found the thing that I wanted to talk about a moment ago before you had to professionally riff. So,
we did good. We digressed.
Yeah, it was good. So the thing that I wanted to mention, right? So when you talk about the ability to backstop all of these losses, right? So the individual business's ability to get some type of assistance to backstop their restaurant, bar, or insert other business here, retail establishment, whatever the case may be, their ability to get that is next to nothing, right? So let's go up a level, right? Let's go to a larger retail setting, or let's go to a chain restaurant, or let's go to those levels. Well, they're still not going to be able to get a backstop to stop their losses, right? So one of the things that's happening is there's an organization called BIG, right? So the Big Business Interruption Group. Their website is We Are Big, and it's R, the letter, not the word, .org. They actually were able to get through a representative in California, federal legislation out there. It's HR 7412. It's called the Business Interruption Relief Act of 2020. And what this is this is trying to create that federal backstop so that insurance companies can pay losses to their policyholders, essentially adjudicate the claims, right? And receive a backstop when they cover losses that are either just flatly excluded or questioned. And it takes the tens of billions of dollars about to be spent fighting over the issue off the table. And it's going to save, court congestion, right? It's going to save legislative time. And the most important thing is that it's going to save time for that business that we've asked to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah.
The hard reality is that when restaurants go down, a lot of other industries go down with them, right? Yeah. You have all the things that support a restaurant. So whether that's the farm and farm to table business models, right? Whether that's the distributor, if a distributor's bringing product to you, you have all those suppliers on the back end. You have trucking that's impacted. You have commerce, right? Like people's ability to just go out because there's less places. A lot of people are going to be surprised, I think, when they used to have that really cool place that they took clients to, right? To socialize and to network and to make more money and grow bigger business. Their status is going to be gone because that place is gone.
Yeah.
Nobody knows your name anymore, Norm, right? Yeah. Like you can't just walk in and be recognized because all those people are gone. Yeah. So that's I think the thing that both through BIG and through Thirst Group, BIG has the HR 7412. Again, like if you go to their website, you can find a way to support it. They've got links to your representatives and everything else. I think it's really important that people get the word out there. And then through Thirst Group, very similar model in terms of contact. It's just to the state levels, not the federal level, right? And there's legislation, I believe, pending right now in about 9 to 11 states have legislation pending on a state level. But that's where you're going to get your backstop, is the federal government's going to have to step in and backstop something the same way that banks and the federal government partnered on PPP money, right?
Well, okay. I want to say this is probably not a popular, and I haven't processed this fully, but this is what this podcast is, right? We're just kind of riffing.
Keeping it raw.
I think it was Peter Schiff on
Pro versus Joe. We go raw.
Yeah.
Raw.
I think it was Peter Schiff.
Real talk. Real talk.
Real talk.
So
get the scoop.
All right, John.
But he was talking about his proposition was when people are expecting the federal government to cover things, it kind of removes your responsibility to what's going on. So he's saying each state should be allowed to set their own rules, but then they have to pay for it from their own coffers rather than being backed by the federal. And I know that's a whole nother deal, but it's like, it does seem, I don't know, ultimately in my mind, you talked about, I don't think it's people necessarily trying to do something nefarious, but rather we just seem, at least at the political level, if there's something that's logical that we could do, we'll do exactly the opposite of that, right? So rather than, I mean, like the $600 to people that were maybe making a third of that, whereas like people that had other jobs making more. I think it was Italy that paid like 90% of whatever your salary was, so they kept it in relationship to whatever you were earning, right?
And short-term disability coverage doesn't even pay that.
Yeah, but
66.
But rather than this imaginary
I'm going to Italy.
Of $600. Well, in some ways it was better here because $600 for people that were making, $150, previously. Whereas if like that,
there's a reason Walmart stock went up.
Yeah. I mean,
reality.
Buying TVs and
but, it was. Did you go shopping when that was happening? Did you try to get into a Home Depot parking lot? You were parking across the street and walking in.
Brian, I mean, that's been a significant interruption to their business as you're waiting extra in line, right?
Well, now watch this. Your supply chain's about to get screwed because there's a wood shortage and everything.
It already has. It takes us forever to get anything.
Yeah.
You know, we had speaking of this, we had a vanity that we were trying to order from Home Depot. I'm like, okay, what's the lead time? Well, the vanities are next day ship, but the logistic company that's going to drop it off at your shop is 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Well, because a lot of them are doing government work right now, moving, PPP supplies or personal protective equipment, PPE. So it's a shifting landscape. So that's for sure.
What? So let's maybe we've exhausted your time, and I know you're a little bit later than us, David. But
hey, it's coming up on midnight, but let's just keep the party rolling.
Well, what's one
keep the water flowing?
What's one thing you've learned during this? What's one new thing that you've learned that you think would be helpful to? So obviously, our audience is primarily property restoration, construction, and some insurance people. Is there maybe a positive note or something that you've learned or been churning that you'd like to leave everybody with?
Sure. So I guess my biggest thing that I would leave people with is this: is you have to report a claim for an insurance company to pay anything, right? If you don't report the claim, they can never pay your loss. Yeah. So what might seem like a waste of time. So one of the things that I'm doing with Thirst Group is through Advocate Claim Service. I'm actually providing a flat rate access to me for 1 year. I'll help you put your claim proofs together and everything else, but it's the insured that handles the conversation, right? But I'm in the background serving as their claim consultant, helping them put together the damage proofs, helping them understand what the policy does or doesn't do. So part of this is a little bit of a risk management session, right? So where I basically, after reading their policy, will say, did you ever see this? Yeah. Were you aware that this is in there, right? Yeah. And maybe have a dialogue with your broker about this, right? Because again, I don't sell insurance, not here to sell insurance. I work on claims. So I'm not your car dealer. I'm your car mechanic, right? When it's breaking down, you call me to fix it. So that's my biggest thing is report your claims. And here's the biggest pitch that I could probably give for myself, right? Which is this. Everybody's COVID claim will be denied. The difference is when legislation starts to change, when courts and opinions start to change, a claim that I help you with will be towards the top of the pile of the ones paid or compromised versus the ones at the bottom where denials may be maintained because you're not putting things contextually correct, right? So that's probably the biggest thing is you got to report your losses. You got to put them forward strategically. Yeah. You got to understand those dynamics, and then you just have to be patient enough to wait.
Yeah. That's good.
That's good.
Well, Brian, you just had a baby, right? You look great.
Hey. I got a puppy.
Yeah. That baby weight came off real quick too.
I know it did.
How about you, Brian? Anything been mulling around in your head, or as you process all this? You've had a little bit of time off, so that probably gives you some time to think about things.
A little antsy to go back to work.
Yeah.
No, I think especially listening to all this it's crazy how just read your policy. I mean, like what you're saying, like you're going to help these whoever it is, whether it's a homeowner, business owner, if you have an educated way of approaching your insurance company, you are going to put yourself at the front of the line versus just being one of the other, mass people.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what I was thinking coming out of the conversation too is, I mean, you have to be your own advocate, right?
Yep.
You've got to, and then our earlier conversation, I mean, I think that was something that Brian and I have talked a lot about is like, knowing, trying to make sure you're not doing the wrong thing, intending to do the right thing, right? So just lack of education is not an excuse anymore because you got great resources like the Diojo podcast and my book, Be Intentional Estimate, available now on Kindle and paperback through the Amazon bookstore. So
not Audible.
Yeah, not Audible. So.
Sorry.
Man, Brian.
Yeah.
Sounds like you just need to read that book into that microphone.
See, I like Audible book.
But you should be the voice.
You have a better.
I proposed that I will be the voiceover.
Right.
I got the microphone for it.
goodbye to your profits, right? Because I'm sure his agent on the royalty.
I represent myself.
Deal. Oh, ooh, so an ignorant client. You gotta like that.
I got my advocate on my Audible.
Well, that's awesome, David. Man, congrats on continuing to thread the needle, and you're a very ambitious man. Continuing to do that ongoing education, and obviously, I hope people grasp. I know it's ever since our first conversation, it's really opened my eyes to, there's just a whole nother network of resources, and we're in the same community, just kind of on different peripheries, I guess, but it intersects. And so it was really cool when Brian reached out, and knowing that that's a service that's available to clients when, you don't have to take, just because you get a no doesn't mean that's the end of the road, right? You don't have
to no.
Right.
That's the start of the conversation.
Yep.
So, yep.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you both for spending the time to on this beautiful, you can see, actually I can see some stars through the trees, but we'll let you guys get some rest. I know, David, it's late for you, and Brian, you got little babies, so
right, man.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
all right.
No worries. Have a good one.
Adios.
Peace. That may have been our longest recording to date. I was going to try to release it as a full, over 2-hour podcast, Go Joe Rogan, but my program that I use wouldn't let me do that, so I had to free up some space on the hard drive. But David Princeton is the principal at Claim Advocate Service. The website is LossPayee, LossPayee.com, LossPayee.com. He's a results-focused strategist with 16-plus years of progressive career growth in the insurance and risk management field. Tenaciously persistent in determining and attaining optimal outcomes, astute negotiator. Background includes value-added, comprehensive expertise in analyzing insurance contracts, claims practices, and managing complex claims. If you hadn't listened to, it's Pro vs. Joe 007, which is a JoJo podcast, episode 32, but David gives some really practical applications for advising clients on how to discuss claims with their carrier, which is also informational for new contractors or contractors working on insurance claims. David referenced the Thirst Group, which is thirstgroup.org. We work to keep independent restaurants and hospitality alive by advocating that our elected officials ensure insurance carriers provide the protection you paid for. So,
get me out of here!
That was a majority of our discussion for the second part. Talking about some of the COVID claims, and if you watched, obviously a lot of my math and my information was off, which isn't too surprising, just mediocre at best, right? So we referenced the article Goldilocks and the Three Estimator Bears, which was released this week with Restoration and Remediation Magazine, The Intentional Restorer, and upcoming episodes include, I had a call lined up with Christopher Stanley from IA Path, and we had to reschedule, but I'm hoping to connect with Karen Hardy from Flip This Risk podcast. We recorded with Andy McCabe to talk about how he became an unintentional public adjuster, and a funny story there. And then it should be, probably the next episode will be the one I recorded with Lisa Lavender. And she invited me to collaborate with her. Restoring Success is the first Friday of every month in Restoration and Remediation Magazine. So nothing scarier than scope creep. She read that portion out of shameless plug, my book Be Intentional Estimating by John Isaacson, developing the right mindset and habits for yourself and your team to succeed with estimating property insurance claims, available for bulk discounts directly from theDiojo.com. She read the chapter and they're talking about scope creep, and wanted to collaborate on that because that's obviously, as a business owner, something close to her heart and watchful eye. So yeah. So some good things to read.
I turned my article, Goldilocks and the Three Estimator Bears, into an audio as well. It'll release on one of these Thursdays as a bonus, and then you can watch it, listen to it on YouTube. And like I said, if it doesn't educate you, if it doesn't infotain you, at least it might help you fall asleep if nothing else is working. So, again, the Diojo Podcast, the infotainment podcast for the skilled trades. We inform you as we entertain you. And thankfully, we have good guests with great insights to make up for our lack of talent. But thank you for listening. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the things. Check us out on thediojo.com. Thank you to our 10 listeners for faithfully watching. We'll see you next time. We'll see you next time.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.